Hey, well, the Oakland Raiders did it. They let go of perhaps one of their best players in their history, Khalil Mack. Absolutely unheard of. And we have to go back and look at what I have tried to tell everyone who wouldn't listen and those who would for the entire year. The Raiders have a money problem. They have telegraphed that they have a money problem, and they continue to do so. Look at the draft. Again, when the Raiders could have spent high dollar, and I mean high dollar, for a more expensive top 10 NFL draft pick. They could have had a Cortland Sutton at wide receiver. They could have even maneuvered to get Saquon Barkley. No. What they did was they held on to Marshawn Lynch with the idea that he was going to physically improve, and he has. They brought in Doug Martin, and then they traded down to get Kolton Miller, with the logic being that, hey, if they're in the top 10 of the draft, picking number, within that area, they're going to be paying top dollar for a pick, and therefore forced to cough up guaranteed money that they know they don't have. Why? Because they're spending a significant amount of their own money in Las Vegas. They have stadium cost overruns forecast to occur, all right? They have a situation where the bond money, the stadium tax money, isn't producing as much money as they thought it would. I knew it was going to produce less than they said. And then on top of that, they haven't landed top dollar sponsors now to help them by providing money that would allow them to build now and for the future on to Las Vegas. The Raiders have a money problem. And so in order to overcome this problem, you have to remember last year, 2017, the Raiders had a net operating income estimated of $41 million, among the lows in the National Football League, if not the lowest. You have to remember that the Raiders have to take money that they have from the following sources. Not just tickets, nope, rights fees from television, local sponsorships, national sponsorships, and on top of all of that, merchandise sales. Those are the primary sources of revenue for the Raiders. Now, of course, they'd love to have some sort of angel investor come along and say, hey, you know what, here's X amount of dollars, and that brings up another point. For some time, the Raiders have tried to sell a percentage of their company for cash without any level of control or say, voting or otherwise, in the organization. All of this points to one thing. The Raiders need money. And so into this equation comes Mark Davis' desire to hire Jon Gruden, fine, but then to spend $100 million on him, all guaranteed. A type of agreement that only athletes like Khalil Mack expect to see. Khalil Mack was never going to see that kind of money the way the Raiders budgeted it. They made this decision a long time ago. They telegraphed the decision by picking players like Maurice Hurst. Look how far he fell in the draft to the 5th round, even though he was a top pick. Then the Raiders grabbed him. Look at Arden Key. Look at the injury problems, the health conditions, the, quote, off-the-field issues, unquote, that we've heard about a number of players, or just simply that they were undervalued like P.J. Hall. This was the Raiders' Moneyball draft. This was their expression screaming out loud for anyone to hear that they don't have a lot of money and that they cannot afford Khalil Mack. And that in order for Khalil Mack to be or remain a Raider, he would have to bend to the Raiders' financial difficulties. And obviously, Khalil Mack was not ready to do that. So where are we? Khalil Mack is traded to the Bears. Could the Raiders have kept Mack? I say they could have. This points to how the Raiders are ran. Let me give you an example. Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones structured a then unheard of deal with Pepsi for $30 million in sponsorships. Did it on his own outside the NFL. Caused a big stir, a lawsuit, because it was actually ambush marketing in a sense, because it wasn't an NFL, Pepsi was not an NFL sponsor at the time, and led to a new system of revenue sharing today, an upgrade over what the NFL had, but I digress. Why did Jerry pursue such a high dollar sponsorship? Forget for the moment that he got it. Because he wanted to pay for Deion Sanders, that's why. That's right. That money went to Deion Sanders. That money was strictly to acquire the services of one of the greatest cornerbacks in NFL history. So ask yourself this question in that regard. Why couldn't the Raiders have structured a special deal with some company to make sure they are able to retain the services of Khalil Mack? Why couldn't they have went across the bay to, say, Apple and structured some type of special sponsorship deal with the use of Apple's products, having Khalil Mack market them? Or maybe some type of special deal of access between Apple and the Oakland Raiders as a local, having Apple as a local sponsor. All of these questions are out there to be asked. I'm asking them. Many of you who've covered this just missed what was happening right in your face. And that's why, hey, it's one thing to have access, but if you don't know what to look for when you have the access, what difference does it make? If you're afraid to ask the question, what difference does it make? The simple fact of the matter is that the Raiders consistently communicated the fact that they don't have a lot of money. The idea that Vegas is awash with cash? No, it's awash with a lot of organizations that are teetering on the brink of bankruptcy or coming out of bankruptcy. The casinos were not writing the checks, large dollar from Mark Vegas. They may very well be buying the tickets, but that's low dollar. Right now, the Oakland Raiders, when it comes to the Las Vegas stadiums, are approximately $600 million in the hole with respect to stadium operating costs because of the cost required to build that stadium and to operate it. They need a naming rights agreement, ideally of $500 million. If they get something less than that, they could sustain $531 million. If they get $400 million, that's not quite there, but okay. But all told, they need to match, if not exceed, what the Atlanta Falcons have achieved in securing over $1 billion of sponsorships for their stadium. Again, why? Because both organizations, the Falcons and the Raiders, have exactly the same $850 million Bank of America line of credit that has to be paid back over a period of years. If it's over a 30-year period, it's $29 million. If it's shorter than that, it's even more. Here's the good news for the Falcons. They paid their line of credit back. Here's the question that's outstanding for the Raiders. They haven't shown that they have the money that guarantees the payback of that line of credit. The Raiders are in trouble. They've communicated that by their actions. And this is the most powerful message yet, that the Raiders have a financial problem because of two very impulsive decisions. Las Vegas and the Jon Gruden contract. Not that Jon Gruden himself was an impulsive decision because Mark Davis spent 6 years going after him. But $100 million? And then why couldn't Gruden have taken $10 million of his own money or 20 and slid it over? Just asking. I mean, it reminds me of the question that Bud Fox asked Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. How many boats can you water ski behind? How much is enough? That's the question I asked to Jon Gruden. Do you really need $100 million? You could have used part of that to retain Khalil Mack. Instead, this season is beginning to look bad before we even start. Love to hear your point of view. Stay tuned. And please, if you haven't done so, subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube.